Hi everybody, welcome to Stalking the Wild Autoharp. I'm Hal Weeks. Last week we went and we did some shopping for a project that we are going to do here now. And I'm going to show you what we're going to do. There's an Autoharp that I need to work on. As I explained last week, this is an Autoharp. It's a B model 21 chord Oscar Schmidt. It's been refinished, but the chord bars, this is a 21 chord bar conversion kit that I put on, and it needs the buttons to be silenced and the action to be lowered. It's because the buttons move side to side in their hole, and they're loose mounted. So what we're going to do is we're going to tighten all that up. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to lower the action so that the buttons are all closer to the strings and you only have to push them down a tiny little bit. The more you have to push down buttons, the further they have to travel, the more fatiguing it is to play. So we're going to tighten up the action on this Autoharp. We're going to lower the action. We're going to de-rattle the buttons today here on Stalking the Wild Autoharp. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the cover on this Autoharp, and you'll be able to see the process that I use and a couple of things to watch out for when you're going to take the cover off an Autoharp if you've never done so before. So the first thing I need is to take out, there's 4 little screws, one here, one over on this side, and one over on this side. And let me see if this one is going to be too big. No, turns out it's just about right. Now here's the first thing that you're going to want to use. Get yourself a little cup or a little bowl for all the parts so that they don't go chasing off somewhere and you have to chase it as it rolls into the refrigerator. Little tiny screws. They can go in the cup. You have to take out all 4 of them. You can buy 21 chord bar conversion kits, and if you just follow the instructions, all you need is a drill, basically, to drill holes. You can put a 21 chord bar set onto an Oscar Schmidt. Now here is the trick that I wanted to show you. When you lift this off, depending on how tight the holes are, the buttons will stay behind. But you see how that one wants to come with? That's okay, but if it falls out, it'll fall on the floor, so you have to be careful. So there is the underside of this is what's underneath. And I'm going to let you see this close up. And I'll show you the cover in a minute because that's what we're going to be working with here in our project. The way one of these chord bars is set up, if you look at it end on, it's a little U-shaped channel. And the button slides back and forth in that channel. So the button can be moved to any row. Right now, it's in this row back here. But if I wanted to move, say, my B7 chord bar to be in this row, I would move it to a different position. You know, I'd take out, for example, this one, and I'd put it here, and I'd move that to this row, and then I'd put this in, and I'd move it to the first row. Okay? Now, I'm not going to do that. I'm not rearranging the chord bars today, but that's how you would do it. And all the chord bars are labeled by Oscar Schmidt. And the buttons, of course, say what they are. So it's important to keep the buttons in the right chord bars, or at least get them put back together in the right way when it's time to put it all back together. So that's a little bit about the buttons. What you have to watch out for is when you take the chord bars off, if you take the chord bars off, and I'm not going to do that today, but if you take the chord bars off, there are these springs on each end. Here's one here. The spring sets on a little post. The spring, when you take the chord bars off, a lot of times the springs want to come with the chord bar. And that is what is so risky, because if you're not aware of this and you take the chord bar off, springs come with it, you swing around, the springs fall off, they go on the floor, they bounce around, they roll under the refrigerator, or they roll under the coffee table, or under the couch, or the cat gets it and runs off with it. And or you're vacuuming and you don't see the spring and it picks it up, and goodbye spring. So it's a good idea, if you're going to take the chord bars off, be very aware of it. And if you're going to be working with the harp, where these might fall off anyway, go ahead and take them and put them in your bowl so that they don't get lost. The other thing that you can do is, if you're tired of your springs coming off, you can take some kind of glue and run it right along here and glue your springs on. You're just going to put a little bead of glue at the base of the springs against the white plastic, and it will glue your springs in place, and they'll never come off again. But don't do it on the inside. Don't do it along this line, because then you get the glue on the screws that hold these down. See if I can show you that right there. There's a little screw right there. That little screw holds the comb, the white plastic thing, to the top of the harp. And if you ever need to take that off, like if you wanted to put a pickup on, or you wanted to replace it with a smaller comb, or move it up or down, and you have that screw glued in place with like super glue or something, it's impossible to get it out. I mean, I've done it wrong myself. So just a couple of little other tips that you can do while you're working under your chord bars. All right. Another thing you can do, you can get special light springs that are softer. You can see Bob Lewis for those. I believe that Pete Daigle also carries them. Soft action screws, which will make your buttons lighter to push down. And that can save some muscle strain. Okay, now I've gone into all this other under a chord bar kind of activity, so I'm going to go ahead and show you this last thing. And I hope it shows up on camera, because on this Autoharp, the felts are black. I'm going to see if I can zoom in here and get this real tight. Okay, when I hold it up like that, you can see that there are grooves in the felt, and the notches that have been cut so that the Autoharp makes the chords that are necessary. I covered that in another video on how to refelt. But what we want to do when we are lowering the action, see, I'm afraid it's too dark for you to see this. Let me see if I shine a flashlight in there, if you can see it better. The chord bars rise up off the strings because of the springs that are on the ends of the chord bars. Now you see all that distance that this is traveling? Well, when you put the cover on, the black plastic cover, all these get lowered down to the place where they're still above the strings, because if they weren't being above the strings, they'd be pushed into the strings, and they'd be dead. So you want to have a little bit of space, but you want to have as little space as possible. You really want that chord bar to rise up just a little bit, but when the lid is on the Autoharp, the black plastic lid pushes down some, but it doesn't push down far enough to really make the action low so that you don't have to move your fingers very far when you're playing. So one of the things that we're going to do today is we're going to lower the action so that it's very close to the strings when the chord bar is up and the lid is on. We don't want it to be touching the strings, but we want it to be barely clearing the strings so that, if possible, the chord bars only have to move about that much. So, how do we do that? We've asked the mystical question, which is, how do we do what we're going to do? We're going to lower the action. We're going to work on this piece, the chord bar cover, on the underneath side. Okay? Now, if you look at how the chord bar cover comes from the manufacturer, around the holes on the inside, there's padding. And the padding keeps the buttons from rattling a little bit. We're going to see if we can tighten that up. I've used this technique that I'm going to show you a number of times before. I learned it way back in the 80s from Autoharpaholic magazine, and it works like a charm. It's going to silence your the rattling buttons. It's also going to push them further down, and it's going to push the chord bars also further down. This job I'm going to show you takes a little while. It takes some time, and it's totally worth the time though, and it's gonna you're gonna be happy. So bear with me. You know, it's a job. You can do it in an evening, but you might want to take 2 or 3 to do it. Okay, just so you know. Okay, and I've set up my little work surface here. Okay, so at Hobby Lobby we got red felt and we got white felt. Still haven't decided which one I'm going to use. And we got the scissors with bigger thumb holes, which are going to be nice. Sometimes I've used scissors that are so small that my thumbs keep getting stuck in them. So these are going to be good. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to take off this felt. It's not actually felt, it's foam. It's like a really loose foam. And it doesn't exactly come off in one piece. But I'm going to tear it off because what we're going to put on is a lot better. So I guess I will show you. You see how black doesn't show up? If I had used black felt in this project, you wouldn't see it very well. I'm just ripping out this foam from the underneath side because we're going to replace it with our felt. The thing about the felt that we're going to put in is it's going to hug the buttons closer than this little foam insert does. And that's where we're going to get our silencing from. That's also going to push the action down. And I guess I'll show you why that is. Here's what we've got now. And I think we'll be able to work with that. I wanted to show you, though, why the felt is going to hug the buttons so well. The foam that they put inside, this is the foam that I ripped out. The holes are the exact same size as the plastic hole in the cover. And so the button pokes up through it well enough, but it doesn't really stop it from rattling against the edges of the hole, which is where a rattle sound is coming from. The button is slightly smaller than the hole. Okay, and so it's rattling against the sides of the hole. So we're going to create a bumper around the edge of all the holes that is slightly smaller than the hole. And the button is going to be pushed through that. So the felt that we're going to put in, either the white or the red, is going to hug the sides of the button better. Now I want to show you the shape of this button. Here's the button. And if you look at it carefully from the sides, look at the button. The button tapers. It's wider at the base than it is at the top. It goes like this instead of like this. And what that means is that if we have a little hole and we push that button up through it, it's going to stretch the hole tight. And that felt is going to hug the button, and it's also going to push the button and keep the button down from coming up too far. It kind of squeezes in on the button and it pushes the button down. That pushes the chord bar down. And it takes up some of the space between the felt and the strings. Okay? All of this is very technical stuff, but it works and it makes sense when you know about it. So I'm sharing with you the esoteric secrets of buttons for Autoharps. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out the piece of felt that I'm going to use. I decided on red because it'll be just so much cooler, and I think it's going to show up just fine in the video. I'm going to cut out a rectangle to go into this space, which is actually more of a parallelogram, but I'm going to trace it onto the felt and cut out the felt. Okay, so for glue there's a lot of options, and I'm not the greatest glue expert in the world. Probably some of you do a lot of crafts and you might know some glues to use better than this. But for my purposes, a lot of my Autoharp work, I just use gap filling super glue. This is Gorilla Glue. I know it'll work. What I want to try to avoid is getting a lot of gloppy glue into these little spaces between the holes, because I don't want it to squeeze out into the hole and close up the hole any. The other thing I'm going to show you here, you can see the pattern that the previous glue job was. They put squirted glue into these diagonal channels. So I'm just going to follow that pattern, and I'm going to put glue in, and I'm going to go kind of fast because Gorilla Glue dries fast. So I'm going to try to squirt out accurately and quickly the diagonals, and then pop my my patch into the gap. So here we go. Okay. And if you can find something to press into that space, all the better. Just to kind of hold it in place for a few minutes while it sets up. So I'll be back with the next step in just a few minutes. So anyway, let's find out if our cover is dry yet. Here it is. At one point I flipped it up just to see if any of the glue squirted out, and it had. It squirted out into the holes, which doesn't make a huge difference because we're going to cut the holes out, remember? But it had actually squirted out into some places where I thought that it was going to emerge onto the top of the cover while it dried. So I went and I got a toothpick and I scooped that out. It was just in a couple of spots where I had put a little bit too much glue in between on the back. So now I'm going to show you the fun part. This is the part that is a little tedious. More tedious even than listening to me. It's just a little bit repetitive. You can probably, I don't know, watch some Netflix or listen to some music or something while you do this, because this is the part that can take, if I recall, it can take hours to do correctly. And not saying it will, but I've done it twice before on Autoharps, and it can take a while, but it's totally worth it. So first things first, you need a refreshing adult style beverage, because I think this is going to be about a 2-beer job here. This is, by the way, is my recent find, Lush Puppy Juicy IPA. You can drink wine while you do this, or you can drink soda pop, or tea, or even water. Just something to make it a little bit more relaxing, because you want to relax while you do this and have fun. Okay, remember those scissors that I bought? Now we get to see if they're actually going to work for the job. The point is the point. They got to be pointy. Now, the last time I did this, I actually had scissors with a little curve to them, and they made it even easier. So if you can find scissors with a little curve, that'll be great. Hey, these are kind of cool. And we're going to see if we can poke through either from the front or the back, one hole at a time. We'll start with this one up here. First of all, let's see if it's actually dry. You can see that I've cut a hole and that it's actually pretty small. But here's what you do. You cut a hole and then you take your button. You have to have a sample button, and you try to push it through. Okay? And that isn't even going to begin to go through. So then you have to make it bigger and make it bigger and make it bigger just until it just goes through, and then stop. And then go on to the next hole. So I know what you're asking yourself. You're asking, how? How's your shoulder? Which is a weird thing to be asking yourself. Glad you asked. Thank you for asking. My shoulder is so-so. I have to exercise it one day and then take a day off and then exercise it. And today is an exercise day, and I haven't done my exercises yet, so I might be pausing the video to go do my exercises. But, oh, on my off days, look at that. Ta-da! Now you see, I don't know if you can tell how tight that is. You see how much red is showing. And when I put the button through, you can see how tight that is. And it may yet be too tight, but it might not be, because it's going to allow the button to rise up and down, and as I work it, it's getting looser. I'm getting the hang of this. It's easier to work from the back, to cut the holes in the back. I poke through from the front, but then I cut from the back, and it's going a lot faster, and it's not taking as much time as I thought it was going to take. Okay, I've got the first pass on my holes cut, so I want to share this with you now so that you can see what I've got going here. You see how, first of all, you see how the red shows through on all the holes. So it's going to look good because it surrounds it nestles the button with a little bit of red showing around the outside, but it prevents the button from rattling. That's what we want. Now here's the deal. This hole, you can see what it looks like. The button is sliding in and out of it really nicely, but there's no drag and it's not tight. With these other holes, I cut the hole out of the center and tried pushing the button through, and it wouldn't go, so I cut a little bit more and tried pushing it through, and with enough muscle I could push it through. Now you see it's in there, it comes through, but it's pretty tight. And what I found when I put all the buttons in and put it back on the harp was they're too tight. And so I'm in the process of loosening them up. This one, well, it'll stay in there, but it's about ready to drop out. Okay, and that's the level that you want it of tightness for it to be. So I have to go back through this now and trim off just a little bit more felt out of these holes that are, the felt is still, there's too much felt around the edges. Okay, so it's a job of fine-tuning it. That's why I say this job takes some patience, because you got to go through with these tiny scissors, and it's not really very easy to get hold of the edges now. If they were curved, it'd probably be different. So if you can find curved scissors, that would be great. Just trim a little bit out of the hole and try it again. If it still doesn't go, try trimming out just a little bit more. Be patient, okay? Because it's going to be awesome when it's done. All right, so I will see you in a little while. I'm going to come back with a more manicured version of this, and we'll put it back together, and then we'll see if it needs anything else. Okay. It took me about 2 more passes through most of the holes, and then I would put it back onto the harp and let the buttons pop up through, and there would be 1 or 2 that wouldn't pop through. And so I remembered which ones they were, took it off, trimmed them up, put it back on, and there was 1 that wouldn't pop up. So I took it off. This is what it takes. You got to go through it until they all pop through, and now they do. So I'm going to show you how this goes back on, and then we're going to put the screws on and see if it needs another step or not, because it might need some fine-tuning after that. let's take a look. I'm going to show you now how this cover fits and goes back down on. You'll notice that the buttons don't completely line up, and this is always the case when you put a Chordbar cover back on, is you have to kind of finagle them back into position. So the buttons pop back up through like that. And as you see, there's no rattle. But we have to make sure that each one is coming up enough to clear the strings when the screws are in place. And the only way to check that is to put the screws in and see if the chord bars rise up high enough, because each chord bar is now being pushed down a little bit further by the felt, by the size of the opening, and the fact that, you remember, the button tapers. And so the button rises up through the hole a certain distance, but not as much as it did before, which pushes the chord bar down towards the strings, which is what we want. But if it pushes it too far down, then we have to make more adjustments. Okay, gang, I got it back on and made a few final adjustments, got the buttons cleared out, and now they're all nice and quiet, no rattling. They feel nice and not tight in the sense that they don't move, but they feel, there's no play side to side, and there's very little distance that they travel up and down, which is exactly how you want them to be to save stress on your hand and your arm muscles. So I better not play any more than that. As I told you, I'm not allowed to play because of my shoulder. But I wanted to show you how to do this job. If you enjoyed this video and give it a try yourself, drop me a note in the comments section and let me know. And don't forget to like and subscribe to this series. I'm Hal Weeks. I'll be back next time for Stalking the Wild Autoharp, where I'll show you how to do something else. Okay? Bye-bye.